I didn't believe this when I saw it for the first time. So I'm going to preface this by saying, hey, I've looked into this story. I've looked at what has been said publicly, and this is an accurate translation. Okay? Some really bad shit is going down internally in Israel's government. Some really radicalizing, bad shit. It's... frankly, it's kind of unspeakable, like how evil and vile the things happening are. But Itamar Ben-Gvir is a terrorist. He's a convicted terrorist who currently holds the position of National Security Minister in Israel. He is one of the most powerful and most influential figures in Israel. He's in charge of essentially the occupation of the occupied territories, and he is also in charge of things like prison conditions. Now, many of you, I've covered this story, might be familiar with the fact that Israel has detention camps run by Shin Bet. Okay? Now, Shin Bet's detention camps have been getting reported on by outlets like the New York Times, even. And in that reporting, it is verified through numerous sources that there is a program of systematized rape and torture. They forcing metal rods into people's anuses, burning their genitals. There have been some absolutely horrific stories that I've heard but cannot confirm, so I'm not going to share them, that go even farther than that. And we're also talking like prisoners are being forced to sit in extremely confined cells, and they are forced to be blindfolded. They don't have the freedom to move. They don't have the freedom to talk to each other. If they talk to anyone but themselves, they get beaten or raped. It is horrific. Now, all of that is being done under Itamar Ben-Gvir. And when asked about it, he had an extremely long response. And he posted it on social media. Now, I'm gonna read the whole thing, because this is... I mean, this is really unspeakable. Yeah, also keep in mind, at the end of March of this year, the Israeli prison service was holding 8,611 Palestinians. That's according to B'Tselem. All right? So keep in mind, there are thousands of prisoners of all ages, including children, in detention camps run by Israel. And keep in mind the horrific conditions that I've described to you, which, by the way, also include things like starvation, sleep deprivation. I mean, you can't even undo your blindfold without getting beaten. It is systematized torture. And it's not just one prison, it's all of them. This is all the prisons. This is intentional. And you might say, but Jack, you don't know that it's intentional. Yeah, maybe it's just the one prison. They shut that prison down, and they're going to do an investigation. The state of Israel would never just do war crimes against prisoners. here is the translated, again, by Google, so you know, take it with a grain of salt. Statement by Itamar Ben-Gvir. The time has come to dismantle the spins and answer the flood of briefings and false accusations by the Shin Bet and its spokespersons in the media. Keep in mind, he runs the Shin Bet. My understanding is that he runs Shin Bet. Shin Bet is like a government agency. Okay? Like they're like the spy agency for Israel. He's the, again, have to remind you of this. Oh, God. He's the Israeli National Defense Minister, okay? Yeah, it's their FBI or their CIA, okay? So he's fighting with one of the country's defense agencies, essentially. Since I assumed the position of Minister of National Security, one of the highest goals I've set for myself is to worsen the conditions of the terrorists in the prisons and to reduce their rights to the minimum required by law. This is what I committed to my voters and the people of Israel back in the elections when I announced it would claim the position. So just right off the bat, his statement is, well, when I came into office, I pledged to implement this system of rape and torture. You know, that was my campaign promise. I'm giving the people what they want, which is an insane way to open your statement. But guys, it gets so much worse. It gets so much worse. Everything published about the abominable conditions of these vile murderers in prison was true. They ruled the prisons without question and did whatever they pleased. In the last year before the war broke out, I waged a war of attrition to carry out the long-awaited reform of their conditions and to fulfill the mandate I received from the public. The central organization that fought my attempts to lead this important reform, and even managed to prevent it, is the Shin Bet, under the command of Ronen Bar. It stood on its hind legs and convinced the Prime Minister time and again that worsening the conditions of the terrorists would lead to an escalation, an explosion, the burning of the Middle East, whatnot. So, just to make crystal clear here, what he is saying here is that he used October 7th. God, sorry. Dates are rolling around. He used October 7th in order to pass these reforms, to push these reforms through. And these reforms are essentially just putting into practice systematized deprivation and torture of all Palestinians, because these detention facilities don't distinguish between, you know, confirmed terrorists and, you know, Palestinians awaiting trial. These are separate prisons from a separate legal system that is only applied to Palestinians. The only people in these facilities are Palestinians. And many of them have never been to trial. And if they are put on trial, it's at a military tribunal under military law. This is not a fair or equitable system of legal justice. And they can be held indefinitely on no charges whatsoever. So, many of these people aren't even charged with a crime. They're just being held and tortured for no reason. This is not new news. What's new news, though, is the fact that one of the highest ranking members of Israel's government is coming forward right now and just saying, yeah, it's our position that we should be able to torture and rape any Palestinian in our custody. That is news. On the 7th of October, we discovered the bitter truth. Our enemies do not need any excuse to massacre us and lead to escalation. They have one reason why they do this, our existence as Jews. At the same time, after the outbreak of the war, I was able to finally carry out the long-awaited reform. The conditions of the terrorists in the prison were reduced to a minimum. We stopped the financial deposits, canceled the canteen for the terrorists, removed the electrical devices from the cells, stopped the terrorists' promenade, dramatically reduced the terrorists' stay in the showers. Again, they have like 5 minutes a week to like shower, okay? Canceled the speaker's status, stopped the indulgent food menu that was converted into a minimal menu, and in short, we completely stopped the summer camp conditions. Again, what he's saying by summer camp conditions here, that's just normal, shitty prison conditions. It was already a shitty prison camp prior to this. They just turned it into a torture and rape camp. That was his reform. And again, none of, maybe not none. Many of these people are not convicted terrorists. They're just Palestinians being held without trial. Terrorists are currently released, who are currently released from prison testify that they will never want to return to Israeli prison. The prisons of the state of Israel are no longer a sad joke. He thinks it's a good thing to torture prisoners because otherwise they might just want to go back to jail. Well, if you don't torture them in prison, they're going to want to come back. That's insane. They have families. They have lives they want to go back to. It is literally the underlying assumptions throughout all of this is essentially that Palestinians are subhuman, that they are animals that need to be slaughtered. And if you think I'm being hyperbolic, we haven't finished this statement yet. As part of the war, the army made many arrests of terrorists and wanted terrorists in Yosh. Notice how, like, arrests of terrorists, not, you know, convicted terrorists. It's just the arrest of terrorists because they aren't actually convicting them of being terrorists. They're just holding civilians. Along with many terrorists who were brought from Gaza, a large part of the detainees, and by the way, keep in mind, these prison camps are populated by people both from Gaza, but also from the other occupied territories of East Jerusalem and the West Bank. Okay? Sounds like he's on his way to recommending a final solution. Well, hold on to that thought, Mike B. A large part of the detainees were housed in a military camp, Sde, Yemen, where they were held by the army. The IDF and the Shin Bet rushed to fold and to announce that the conditions of incarceration at the site would be examined, that the number of prisoners held at the site would be reduced. In practice, a situation has arisen in which, due to the harsh living conditions of the prisoners, we're talking about despicable terrorists, yes, there are now 1,500 vacant prison places in the Yemeni field. Even in the prisons that are under the responsibility of the security service, where many terrorists were taken in, overcrowding was created. Now he's like trying to say in this statement, this is the weird part to me, where he's like, well, there's overcrowding in the prisons, but like, you think that's good. So it's not overcrowding. You just think that that's properly, like, filling up the prison. That's your opinion. You don't think it's overcrowded. But I never thought of releasing terrorists from prison because they are crowded. Oh, it suddenly makes so much sense. Yeah, you never thought of releasing terrorists from prison just because they are packed in like sardines.
I want to give you an opportunity to address it.
Oh, God. Okay, I don't know why that turned on, but cool stuff. Hey, Itamar Ben-Gvir, one of the most evil motherfuckers in Israel right now. Again, convicted terrorist himself, by the way. Actually convicted too, not just held without charge. Crazy. But this is the core of the dispute between me and Shin Bet chief Ronan Bar. Ronan Bar claims that the conditions of the terrorists in prison, including overcrowding, look bad in the world and may lead to escalation. And to that point, Ronan Bar is correct. It turns out when you become internationally known as the country that wants to torture and rape prisoners en masse, turns out people don't like you on an international scale. Like, again, even if we just look at the Jewish community in the United States, the shift in public perception of Israel as a result of reporting and stories like this, colossal. It is a sea change. UN minimum standards of prison treatment. Rule 1, all prisoners shall be protected from torture and other cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment for which no circumstances whatsoever may be invoked as justification. Yeah, no, mishire. Exactly. Like, he's just admitting war crimes. He's on Twitter admitting war crimes. Of course, it's not done. And I claim that if any other country in the world were to do what was done to us, it would do many times more against those terrorists and put one big line on all of those who cluck their tongues. Are they crowded? Next time they will think twice before they go out to slaughter, rape, and loot. Because we've slaughtered, raped, and looted them 100 times more than they did to us. Yeah, that will surely end the enmity. And as for the Shin Bet's claims, according to which the Shin Bet and the Ministry of National Security did nothing to establish and add new prisons, this is nonsense, which was fully promoted by leftist media. These are the exact facts. The Shavash has already begun an accelerated construction project of new prisons, and since October, 2,500 new prisons have been added. Guys, can we just take a moment that in the last, 7 or 8 months, they've built 2,500 more prisons. That is a lot of prisons. That is that is very specifically what I would call a worrying amount of prisons. Just as an FYI, folks. Just as an FYI, the United States has 1,566 state prisons and 98 federal prisons. Okay? If you include jails, we have 3,100 some of those, okay? But they've built more prisons in Israel in the last 8 months than what we have on a state and federal level in the United States. I'm surprised this is not getting more news coverage. Yeah, no, this is insane. How? Well, I think we're gonna see exactly why Itamar Ben-Gvir is so keen on having so many new prisons. I think we're gonna get there, and you're not gonna like it. Another project began last April, and it includes the construction of 936 additional prisons that is currently underway, when in addition to the emergency construction during the war, the Shevas will complete by the end of the year a construction project of 1,200 prison places throughout the country. All this alongside the fact that since the beginning of the war, the Israeli Defense Forces have captured a record number of over 5,000 terrorists arrested by the security forces. Again, he's just using terrorist instead of Palestinian because they have not been trying these individuals and convicting them for crimes. Okay? So, yeah, remember when I was saying, wow, 2,500 sounds like a lot? Well, actually, it's over 3,000. And actually, if you include the additional prisons, we're actually looking at 4,400 new prisons. Can you fit that many buildings in Gaza? I mean, they're probably not building them all in Gaza. There's plenty of, vacant room in the West Bank after they finish bulldozing 3 villages. Yes, and remember, they're run deliberately as torture camps with systematized rape. Like, this is not... man. He's saying prisons, but he means camps. Oh yeah, I mean, I can't imagine the hastily built camps and facilities he's talking about are, state of the art. But let's continue. It is very possible that even after the addition of the new prisons is completed, the many terrorists will still be overcrowded in prison. I have already proposed a much simpler solution of enacting the death penalty for terrorists, which would solve the overcrowding issue, legislation to which the Shin Bet is also vehemently opposed. But until this legislation, with God's help, is passed, nothing will happen if the Nohava terrorist who burned a baby girl on October 7th, it will be crowded in the prison cell where he died. Yeah. He got on Twitter and proposed the simple solution, as opposed to the final solution. He wants to pass legislation to enable Israel and the IDF to carry out mass executions. He is one of the most powerful political figures in Israel right now. He's one of the top 3 currently active in Israel. Not only is he openly defending concentration camp conditions in which people are systematically tortured with beatings, with deprivation, and with rape. He's not only defending that, he's literally saying, well, I want to mass execute them. I think that would be good. Because keep in mind, when he says we need to be able to execute terrorists, what he's saying is we need to be able to kill every Palestinian in our custody. He makes no distinction between civilian Palestinians and actual Hamas terrorists. Again, there's no distinction. There's no daylight for him. They are all the same. They are animals that must be exterminated. They are vermin to him. And I mean, it's telling that even Shin Bet, and the Shin Bet is not a progressive lefty organization, okay? They are not like good guys. They're one of the most evil intelligence agencies in the world, okay? And even they are going, we shouldn't do that. That's too far. Like, yeah, there are no words. There are no words. Everyone needs to hear about this, man, because, like, I heard about it specifically thanks to The Intercept's reporter. And again, The Intercept has been doing amazing work throughout all of this. But Prem Thakur, I might be pronouncing his name wrong. But again, everything published about the abominable conditions was true. I've already proposed a much simpler solution of enacting the death penalty. I mean, guys, I don't know what to say. he's literally saying, yeah, they're concentration camps. I meant for them to be concentration camps. I want them to die in there because I think that is actually a good thing when Palestinians die in our prisons. And on top of that, he's like, but I have a simpler solution if you're appalled by like the inhumanity of it. Let's just kill them all. Again, no words. No words for how incredibly awful this is. So, I needed to cover this story because I need you all to know that this is happening, because I really held out hope for a long time that Joe Biden was going to be applying some kind of pressure to prevent stuff like this from happening, but it's whatever the administration is doing, if it has been doing anything at all, is clearly not working. And just keep in mind, guys, this is one of the most evil men on the planet today. I just can't. I can't believe that he is so comfortable with his genocidal rhetoric that he'll just go on Twitter and talk openly about mass executing Palestinians. And again, why you building thousands of new prisons and calling for executions if you don't plan on executing thousands of prisoners?